Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is the Narcissistic Resistance, and this resistance video is sponsored by contribution from Logan, and here is his story. Hi, Ollie. I would just like to start off by saying that I have been watching your videos religiously for the past 2 months. All of them in some way or another have illuminated a lot of dark corners that I still have hidden away in my mind. I honestly cannot remember what video of yours first put me on the path of this understanding, but I could not stop after just one. You mentioned specifically in The Golden Child Lives in the Matrix how the golden child's realization of just who their parents are is akin to unplugging from the Matrix. That analogy hit me so close to home for me. I am not a golden child, as I am the only one to my mother, who will be the focus of this. The revelation that your parents were against you when you finally break free of them and go no contact is mind-fucking. The clarity is intense, and I am still struggling with it all. Anyway, here we go. Forgive me if this meanders a bit. My life could be the subject of a five-season dramatic television show, and I just wanted to lay out the highlights. It all started with a fling. My mother and biological father were not in a relationship and didn't even know each other well enough when they conceived me. I was unplanned. My mother told me stories about my biological father, about how he once beat the shit out of his kids after they went near an open stove while my mother was using it. She told John, my biological father, of what happened, and he proceeded to take the kids upstairs and slam the door. My mother told me that John came back down. She went up to find them huddled in the corner together, bruised and sobbing. My mother decided to leave after that, but it wasn't easy. She was stalked by John as she went to college for her nursing degree, had the wheel well in her car busted and the tire slashed, and tried to run her off the road in a car chase. John was arrested for disorderly conduct after my mother fled into a police station. Crazy shit. Despite all of this madness, my mother continued to excuse John's actions as the result of a stressed, broken-down man who was reeling from a bitter separation. I never shared in her empathy. Dealing with the fact that my real father was out there and that the stepfather I called Dad was not really my father, I was pretty confused from a very young age. My mother would later divorce and remarry my stepfather 3 times because of his rampant alcoholism, enabling his own narcissistic, toxic family and general unpleasantness to be around. His alcoholism led to many cases of neglect in my experience, and the more he drank, the more I realized that cradled that can or bottle more than he did me. Then my golden child stepbrother Michael came into the picture. This kid was a monster. On multiple occasions he would break my toys, get me in trouble for things I didn't do, and end up facing my stepfather's wrath with whoopings, and he even tried to kill me. I recall one horrible memory in which he tried to drown me in a kiddie pool that we had in the backyard. Till this day, I still panic when water splashes him on my face. During all this time, my mother worked as a charge nurse for hospitals and nursing homes. For a time, she was pretty stable. After she had divorced my stepfather for the second time, she and I pretty much lived as one family unit. This is when things started falling apart. When she wasn't trying to win the affection of total losers who would rape her and later give her an STD. Yes, I know this information. She was especially rough with me emotionally and verbally. My mistakes were unforgivable crimes. I was grounded quite a lot. A week before one of my birthdays, I want to say that I was 11, but I could be wrong. She grounded me for not playing my piano one day. I had been taking lessons, but on that day I didn't bother with it. She bit my head off for it. This is what my mother would do constantly. She would put me in sports even though I had no interest in it, and force me to go to church, which, even at that age, I knew I didn't want anything to do with. I remember once faking being sick so I could not go. Yeah, she was a Bible thumper too, considered rock music sinful. Outrageously, it didn't occur to her that her experiences of going to Motley Crue and Poison concerts as a rebellious teenager made her seem like a raging hypocrite. The life she lived, I never got to live. I was homeschooled against my will, pulled out of the fourth grade where I would not see the few friends I had there for 6 years, and fed me the same religious crap as part of my curriculum. I couldn't ride my scooter down the road as she had to keep her eyes on me at all times. I couldn't even visit the one friend I had left, Marty, who lived on the adjacent block. Even visiting my grandparents for longer than planned was a no-no. I once came home and had to hear about how disrespectful I was, that I was not being loyal to her because I loved my grandparents more. This insanity would be a running theme in every fight regarding my grandparents in the future. I was isolated. That wouldn't stop for a long time. Yeah, because she turned you into a son husband. Then Tom came into the issue. Tom was her last boyfriend before going back to my stepfather. Tom was an awful, awful man who pushed me away after trying to give him a hug for no reason, and screaming in my face when I accidentally touched his hair. A royal beta cuck who used sex as his means of feeling superior. This guy was pushing 70 fucking years old while my mother was in her early 30s. So your mother's looking for dick, attention, and money. That's what your mother's about. Dick, attention, and money. Nothing about their relationship was right, even to a kid like me. Tom would bitch to me about how my mother would lay around all day and not work, and I would have to hear every grievance that he had. He even sat me on his lap before calling my mother a couch potato, as if I was supposed to do something about that. Tom would rape my mother when she didn't want to have sex with him. I accidentally walked in on them one night after having a nightmare. He got mad at me for it, as if I was willingly cock-blocked him. It's unbelievable. Another traumatic thing I saw was a tape of Tom masturbating in the shower while my mother filmed him. Ugh. See, I would question how abused your mother was. Like, your dick and attention. Dick and attention. I was messing with her video camera, which used discs. I had been recording on it that day and wanted to see what all I captured. Filmmaking has always been a hobby and an interest of mine. So little old me put the disc in the living room DVD player, expecting to see me pretending to fight Sith Lords with plastic lightsabers. I just saw this disgusting pig jacking off. I still get grossed out by the thought of it. Tom would be in the picture for a few more years after that. I didn't tell a soul. Well, I don't feel bad, Logan. I got to see a tape of my parents, at a sex party in their friend's pool. So me and my brother. And this is being recorded on disc, so this is fairly recently. So you're not that old of a guy. Now to 2008. The house Mom and I lived in was lost in a mortgage scam. The recession finally hit. We ended up moving to a smaller house across town. Still just the two of us. During the move, I had another sickening, traumatic experience. While looking through some boxes for a game or a movie to watch, I found my mother's sex toys. It was disturbing, and I was so embarrassed even though no one else was there. Bonkers, eh? Found my grandmother's sex toys after we had her put in the mental institution. Found her sex toys, her handcuffs, her sex journal. After that, my mother quit her nursing job as she had broken her wrist and ankle while stepping off the porch. The doctor told her she had a genetic cognitive connective tissue disorder and that she couldn't work anymore. This is where my hell began. This blow to her ego, this blow to her ego was always as the always pretty, always smart, never wrong pseudo-feminist was devastating, and it might as well have just killed her completely. I started becoming the subject of her anger and derision. At 14, I would go grocery shopping, get her prescriptions, clean the house, take care of the dogs, make the meals, and go back to public school. All this time I was lazy. I was unappreciative. Nothing I did made her seem happy about anything. She just wanted to be miserable. For that entire year, my friends at school were my only saving grace. I might as well not have had a mother. She stopped talking to me. She stopped taking me to school and had me ride the bus for most of the year, staying in her own medicated, delusional world. Everything meant nothing to her, but I still manned up and did all I could to keep things together. Yeah, because you turned into the son husband. The doting son husband. It didn't even matter. I tried to ask her if she would want to assist me in my math homework because I sucked at it. Every mistake I made, wrong answers, wrong order of operations, I would get berated how I'm not trying hard enough. One day I came home from school and forgot my math folder. The same venomous spiel started. After a while, she apologized and asked me to hit her. I was like, "What?" She repeated the question. I let the anger steep up and punched her in the arm. Enter my stepfather, who went into DTs and eventually stopped drinking alcohol. This, for some reason, snapped my mother out of her depressive limbo. Keep in mind, this drunken buffoon made her see the light instead of me, a 14-year-old kid who just wanted to be acknowledged for once. We moved back to our hometown, and the darkest period of my life starts. The fights with my mother would get more extreme. The more insults became more damaging. I once forgot one thing on a list of cleaning supplies she needed from the store. When I brought 7 of the 8 items back, she called me a retard and on about how I never listened to her for shit. I offered to go back to the store, and as I began to walk away, she said in the most evil tone, "Get your fat ass back here." At this time, I was struggling with body dysmorphia. She always did that. Make weapons out of my imperfections, out of my feelings, out of my sadness. She would tell me that taking care of everything before we moved back didn't count. Repeat this nonsense ad nauseum. After a while, this started to really wear me down. I began self-harming to release anger I was feeling towards her and towards myself. I felt like I could never do good in her eyes and that I was really alone. Meanwhile, my stepfather would start drinking heavily again, talking to his family and bringing them around the house to cause trouble. When my mother wasn't ripping my ass apart, she was ripping his apart for muddying the waters. This conflict made me check out and began leaving the house periodically to go on drives and walks. I eventually started looking for jobs. One was at a drive-thru, but my mother vehemently disagreed on the basis that she knew people there and they are scumbags, as if that matters. Then I found a job offer as a pizza delivery guy. She said no to that with the excuse it would take up too much gas, even though my stepfather was driving almost an hour to his job to get to his job at a tire factory daily. This shit would just keep going on, and the fights would reach a fever pitch by 2015. After she received news that she wouldn't be able to walk anymore because of her disorder, my mother proceeded to blame me for it and exploded at me in a Walmart that day when she had to stop and get clothes. I wanted to curl up, and this is what you need to do, and this is what I hope has happened. Well, I know, because you said you have no contact. She turned you into the doting son husband. The doting son husband that you see When I was working at the head shop, at the tobacco head shop, rolling the cigarettes, I had this woman come in and with her son in tow, this old woman with her son in tow. And her son had to be in his 50s and she had to be in pushing 80. And I mean, she was just friggin', just one of these women that are out there to make people's lives miserable. And he's just standing there, and I'm telling her how everything works, and she's like, well, how do I know? And I'm like, if I don't like it, I'm like, well, if you don't like it, there you can return it. And, well, how do I know? Like, I'm like, because I'm telling you, I'm gonna, well, how do I know you're gonna remember me? And I, without even stopping, and I go, sweetheart, I go, until the day I die, I will not forget this conversation. And her son started laughing, and she snapped around, and I looked at him, and I'm like, dude, you got to put an end to this. You got to stop. I'm like, do you see how easy that was? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, and I looked at her, I'm like, you're killing this guy, and he's your son. So you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I know exactly what I'm talking about. Trust me. That's your mother. That's what you would have ended up as. That's what you would have, walking her around, getting abused by her. Ugh. I wanted to curl up and die on the spot as she became more belligerent, calling me disloyal and ungrateful because I wanted to see what other clothes were in the section. I would leave the house that day, moving my... Good, thank God. Thank God that was the final straw. I would leave the house that day, moving my shit over to my grandparents so I could escape the constant criticisms and yelling. She ended up hoovering me back to the house, where she just proceeded to call me disloyal again, and that how dare you leave me alone and sick like this. Alone? This is a bitch who was going to Motley Crue and Poison concerts? Like, she's a Gen Xer then, the lying little bitch. Oh, God, I don't even buy her condition, to be honest, which I just think she's lazy. Big mistake. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and slashed my wrists in front of her. Jesus Christ, man. Yelling, well, then you won't care about this. She followed me there and stopped me before I could do anything serious, and she loosened up after that. But not for long. My self-harm would be thrown in my face, just more ammo from her locker, and that was her favorite tactic. She later got angry at me for something very trivial that I couldn't remember, and took out her loaded .38 snub-nosed revolver, pressing it up against her temple. Oh, do it. In front of me. I froze. My stepdad didn't do shit. I immediately asked her to stop and put it away. I thought that she was going to shoot me at first. At that point in our relationship, she was getting more violent. She ripped my earphones out while I was listening to music one night and began poking and pushing me. I told her to stop and back off, but she didn't. I then got my jacket, slipped on some Crocs with no socks, and walked out into the autumn chill. I resigned myself to sleeping in a church garden when my cousin happened to drive by and see me. He brought me back home. That was the end of that episode. Later in the week, she stopped smoking and told me to help her in staying away from it. She even said, if you have to be mean to me, then do it. I wasn't going to be mean anyway. Flash forward a couple weeks, and here comes Momzilla again. She got all pissed and prepared to grab a cigarette from the dining room. I rolled all of her cigarettes. Oh my God, Jesus Christ. You're rolling her cigarettes for... So you were this guy. Oh, you were basically this guy that ended up in the... Oh, God. That's a thing with narcissists, and I noticed that there. They like to have people roll their cigarettes for them. Wow. I got in front of her, pleading for her to stop that she was doing so well. She didn't listen and proceeded to walk into me. Nostrils in front of... Wait. She didn't listen to me. She didn't listen and proceeded to walk into me. Nostrils, I had my hands up to help in keeping her from the cigarettes. But after a brief struggle, she let up and gave me a look of shock. She accused me of assaulting her, to which she threatened to call the police, and compared me to the rapist she had encountered in her life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She rang up her friend Paulie to gaslight me and make me out to be such a terrible son, and in person in general, that I would do this to her. I ran up to my room for some quiet, but I heard stomping up the stairs. I closed the door to my bedroom and locked it before she started jiggling the doorknob so forcefully I was afraid she was going to rip the fucking thing off. I thought she couldn't walk. Then she started ramming into the door with all the strength she had. Mind you, she was still threatening to call the police on me. I told her to stop. She didn't. After a while, I opened up the door. She shook her head and left. The rest of the day and the next were a blur because I was fed up. It was time to fully commit to not being in contact with this fucking lunatic. The next morning, I left for my grandparents. My mother went for a drive without a license, mind you, and once she found out I was gone, she called me pretending she was in an accident. I saw through her bullshit at that point. When that tactic failed, she drove over to my grandparents and proceeded to barge in and yell at the three of us for betraying her. Total rage. I was crying while my grandparents forced her to leave under threat of calling the police. She stopped and left, but not before my grandfather told her that she was not her daughter anymore. I'm going to be very honest with you here, Logan. Okay, this thing with betrayal. I think your mother's made up her whole story. I don't buy it. I think she brought in shitty men who probably abused her, and I think she liked it. I was born again on that day. My new life had begun. She tried to sabotage my relationship with the rest of the family by doing the same shit she did with her friend. Tell people how I assaulted her, was a good-for-nothing brat and a selfish asshole. I retaliated with a post of my own on Facebook, calling her out. I regret that to this day, but I had enough of keeping my abuse out of the light. This was the woman who gave me the silent treatment for not taking her with me to open my own checking account. The jig was up for her, but it wasn't the end. She later blackmailed me into relinquishing my cell phone to her because she paid for it, and that if I refused, I would be charged with theft. I don't know why I did it. I didn't want any more trouble from this fucking woman. The health emergency started, and once they did, I told my grandparents to just duck her calls completely. I didn't want to hear or even think about her. The call stopped, or they just didn't tell me. But I eventually had to go get my things from the house. She refused to open the door, and I had half a mind about having the sheriff accompany me. I didn't, and managed to find a spare key that my grandmother kept for the house. I came over and warned her, either you open the door or I'm opening it with a key. She opened it in silence, and I told her that I was there to get my things, and she let me in. My useless stepfather was sitting on the couch, drunk and detached, not saying a word. Mom did all the talking as usual, telling me I was being ridiculous and crazy. Then started attacking my grandmother, who came over as a witness. My mother called her a bitch and an old hag. Her own mother, Ollie. I was so fucking shocked at her behavior that I resigned myself to the fact that this woman isn't my mother anymore, and she doesn't deserve to have that title after the constant shit she kept throwing in my face, starting when I was a kid, when I did nothing but care for her and make sure that the house stayed clean and stable. I was her uncomplaining servant, but it didn't matter. Like always, I was never enough to satisfy the bruises that her ego sustained when she got sick. I wasn't going to play her game anymore. I was finished getting my things, and as I began to walk out into the pouring rain that was only brewing earlier, I shot my mother an angry glare. No more words spoken. I departed, leaving that terrible place. I'm gonna stop this right here. I have a fuck ton more memories to share about my mother and my experiences living with her, and I just wanted to share the basics of what happened. It's just making me angry and triggering bad feelings now. Like I said, television show. Thank you for reading this, Ollie, and I appreciate your honesty, and I'm waiting with bated breath for your thoughts on this situation thus far, and I'm honestly a little nervous putting it out there. All your advice is appreciated. Best regards, Logan. Well, you gotta understand, Logan, you were basically married to your mother. Okay? Basically, you're in a situation of when you're the son husband, but a victim of of domestic abuse. So it's basically the narcissistic mother commits domestic abuse of the son husband, is what's going on. So you're basically a battered one. You're basically a battered spouse of the narcissistic mother. And the more you stay no contact, the more clarity you're going to get, Logan. And it is just so funny. It's so ironic that the story I connected to with you was the one from the head shop where I'm rolling this old bat's fucking cigarettes with her son in tow that he's been son husbanded his whole life. That was your future, man. That would have been your future. And I'm glad you got away from it. So, but you were the victim of son husband domestic violence. That's what it was. So, I hope that helps. Thank you so much for your contribution and story, Logan. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a narcissist you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, or a Facebook live chat, or you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you guys. Without you, all of this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the PayPal and email links in the description box. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been the Narcissistic Resistance. Take care.